Okay, welcome everybody. It's 3 minutes past 2, so thanks. We've got a good group of people who've logged onto the webinar. So welcome to everybody. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. Um, Let me introduce you. We've got Jack Wilson from AgFirst, who's going to run through a webinar about successful orchard development. Some of you might know Jack through his work with the orchard business analysis work over the years. He's got a Bachelor in Science, Bachelor of Science in Ag Science, as well as a Master's in Horticulture and specialising in orchard production systems, so very relevant. Jack is going to focus on some of the key considerations for successful orchard development. Clearly, getting an early performance of a young orchard right is crucial for its long-term profitability. So Jack will outline some of those key planning strategies to help mitigate the risk when setting up an orchard for optimal growth and productivity. I think Jack's going to take about 30 minutes to run through some of his insights, some of his slides. And then we'll take questions and answers after that. So if you've got a question, just type it up in the chat session on the Teams. Welcome, Jack.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Jeremy. I'll just share my screen. Jeremy, if you just want to let me know if you can see that.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for you to put the slides up. Yeah, that's it. Perfect.
Yeah, sweet. Great. Okay, yeah, so thanks for the intro. So yeah, I'm Jack. Jeremy's mentioned a little bit of history. I suppose for a little bit more, my core job title and description is effectively helping grower clients out there with all parts of their business. But I suppose particular focus around the economic drivers of orcharding and how to best optimize their performance to get the most bang for their buck effectively, because we're here to make money as well as have fun doing it, but that making money is pretty important. So for the webinar today, the idea is to talk about development decisions. So very topical. We've now picked the last apples, and so we've gone into review mode on orchard and looking at what we need to do now, what is the way forward for your orchard business, and how do you best go about that. So the idea today is to talk about, from start to finish, the development decisions and things you might think about to develop, with the key objective is to keep your orchard up to date with the right genetics and the right technology, etc., so you don't get left behind. So we'll look at it through a few different lenses. One of them being a whole orchard lens, and then more detail into the block to block lens and how that decision is made at that level, as well as the whole orchard level in terms of cash flow and things like that. So yeah, we'll look at this is how we'll do it. We'll look at the influence of profitability. This is something that if you've been to a lot of the orchard walks or kept up with the Future Orchard program, is something that we've talked about a lot lately, and that's talking about what the influences are to your economic profitability, which are those 4 Ps, which we'll talk about in more detail. Then once you've got an idea and you've got the data behind you, it's looking at categorizing blocks into the improve and remove matrix. So looking at the data block by block and working out, for your next development, which blocks are likely to be the ones that you target. Then navigating the what to plant next discussion. This one's different for many people, but it's an important one, and it requires a lot of thinking. So there's a lot of options out there, but picking the right genetics for you and your business it needs a lot of consideration. Then we'll talk about grafting versus replanting and the cost benefit of that. They both have their pluses, they both have their negatives. So we'll just go a little bit into detail around that. And then looking at the fundamental requirements for a successful outcome. Like I said before, we're here to make money out of growing. So there's a lot of things at a very higher level which are happening, or elements that need to be optimized, which sometimes aren't. And I looked over, and then we'll summarize it all. So the levers to financial success, we've talked about this before, the 4 Ps, but in terms of the economics, those 3 Ps are standouts. So production, pack out, and price. When we're doing the OBA analysis and results, the blocks that are the most successful are the ones that optimize all 3 of them. So production, pack out, and price, which refers to the genetics and the price you get in market. So, 2 without the other is often not good enough. So being able to strive for optimizing all 3 is really important. And the 4th one's people. So I think labor costs from the OBA data contributes to approximately 60% of the total on-orchard costs. That's significant. And so the people part of those 4 Ps is working out a way in which you can plant your trees to make people as efficient as possible, and therefore have happy people and people that are motivated and want to work, so that you can get the pack out, you can get the price, you can get the production with happy people. The other note there is cost, and it's super important to be aware and have management over your costs, but not at the expense of those 4 Ps. And what I mean by that is, if you're reviewing at the end of the year and you've worked out you've spent, say, $3,000 on fertilizer, and you say, okay, that's not good enough, I'm going to reduce that by $1,000, but that detriments the production pack out. The result of the detriment to the pack out and price, pack out and production, is going to be far greater than that $1,000 you spent in the cost. So being aware of that, really important, but not at the detriment to those 3 Ps. And the other part of this is having all this data to be able to benchmark your blocks, right? So we've talked about this in the last field walks, orchard walks, but there's a whole list of key orchard metrics that are really valuable to have at a block level for you to be able to benchmark and be able to come to this development decision with really informed data. Data that you can use to be able to use this matrix. So this is an improve or remove matrix. Again, a lot of you might have seen this before, but this is a matrix with 4 categories that, with all the data from your orchard metrics, you'll be able to say, or you'll be able to categorize your blocks into these 4 categories. So with the idea being where you can put it into these categories to make your decision around which block you want to develop a little bit more informed. So we'll just go through them. Firstly, you've got a good block of a good variety. Effectively, if it's not broke, don't fix it. This is a block that is really humming and it's paying well in market. So it's not okay. Leave it alone. It's thinking about how do you make it excellent and what sort of things you can do to make it even more successful. Then you've got a poor block of a good variety. These ones they've often got a limiting factor in them. You need to figure out what that limiting factor is and work out whether the spend on getting that block to be better is worth the reward. So an example of that is being a block that's low in productivity because the canopy isn't there, it's not intercepting enough light. And so what strategies can you do to get that canopy up and therefore the productivity up? Because you know that it's a good variety, the genetics are worth backing, and it's possibly worth the spend for the reward. The next one's a good block of a poor variety. These are frustrating. These are often blocks where in the development decision your emotional side kicks in, which isn't a great thing. These are blocks where you're doing a great job. It's the block's humming, but the variety just doesn't deliver in market. And there's always a risk of financial failure. So with this one, unless something is going to change with the variety in general, there needs to be a plan to start to remove this. And this is one where you need to think about at a whole business level, because it might not be the one that you target first. This one will be the one that you target first. A poor block of a poor variety, these are pretty easy. It's time to think about getting rid of them. So I've got a couple of examples to help you start to think about categorizing your blocks, and these are simply put with a few simple metrics. So this photo is a poor block of a good variety. It's 35 tonne a hectare. The Packout's 85%, but it's getting $35 a 12 kg box. Its cash operating surplus is 600 a hectare, so it's positive, but it's not a blinding success. So the discussion needs to be had with a block like this. Okay, what is the limiting factor? And as you can see in the photo, it's quite obviously production. It is not intercepting enough light to have that productivity that we need in order to be really successful. So the decision and discussion needs to be, okay, what can we do to fix that? You'll see that the structure doesn't go above head height. So is the reinforcement of new trellis, waratahs to the existing stuff, is that a spend that's worthwhile for you in your business in order to get the reward out of that block? That's the sort of decisions that need to be made. The next one's a good block of a poor variety. Look at that photo. It's a block that's just it's even. It's full of fruit. It's doing at least 90 tonne with a 75% pack up, but it's only paying $20 with a cash operating surplus of minus $700. Again, this is one to think about at a whole orchard level. The orchard business analysis, the OBA data suggests that overheads is $4,200 a hectare for an Australian orchard, which means that this block is contributing to overheads. And that 4,200 costs that don't go away when you pull this block out. So meaning that this block is contributing to those. And so there is an argument to leave it in. But like I said, it's a whole orchard decision. So if you had this block and you also had a block that's a poor block of a poor variety, obviously that one goes first. Say if this block was half of your orchard, you might stagger it and only do X% of it rather than doing the whole thing. So because of cash flow. So keep in mind that this is a whole business decision, not just a block by block level, and keeping really close tabs on your data and therefore your cash flow, etc. So we're aware of the influence of profitability. We've identified the block that we need to remove. Now we need to think about what to plant next. And I can't emphasize enough how much effort needs to be put into this decision. It requires really good due diligence into the new varieties out there, etc. It requires really good relationship building with people like IP owners and your post-harvest providers, because choosing the right variety and the right genetics is one of the most important decisions you'll make in the development decisions. So it is one not to take lightly. So what's out there? There's new varieties, there's IP varieties, and so working out what's available there and building those relationships with those owners. There's commodity options, there's high value, which often comes with a low supply model. Those are the options, and then there's the options or the things to consider around your business. And so it needs to fit with your business, and the main part of that is managing the peaks and troughs. of your labour. It's like at home we have a lot of standard raw gala, and it breaks even, if that. And the main reason that we've got it is because it allows our labour pool to work for almost the entire season, so that we don't lose them. It needs to fit with your consumer. In terms of the relationship between tangy varieties and sweet varieties, knowing what your consumer wants is really important. And then you fit with your post-harvest relationships in terms of the timing and the type of fruit in there. So we've got the block, we've got the variety. Now we need to work out how we're going to do it. And I wanted to talk about grafting versus replanting, because it is two methods. Both have their positives and negatives. But I wanted to go through and outline what the requirements are for both, and more importantly through grafting. So replanting has been common in the last decade. It's been common for yonks, but in the last decade, because we are removing blocks with old rootstocks, technology and wider row spacings, we're getting rid of that, because we have to, with the rising costs, we have to be able to produce, high productivity of high quality fruit. So that's why we're doing that. Grafting is really cost effective option compared to replanting, but it needs to be done in a scenario where you can ensure you're getting high yields of class 1 fruit. And I think what's important is knowing that all of these canopies need to be what we refer to as SNAP, which is simple, narrow, accessible, and productive. So whatever you need to do, making sure you can achieve that. But with grafting, it's not as simple as it seems. There are a few must-haves in order to do that. Obviously, the attractiveness of grafting is the lack of the upfront capital spend. But the blocks must be high in tree health. If you've got if the limiting factor and the reason why you're developing this block is because of tree health, then grafting, you're probably going into the same scenario with the new block, and you might have a lot of tree deaths. So tree health is really important. You need to have low variability. Variability is probably the key killer of yield, and so grafting a block that's even and settled is a great option for grafting, and having a row spacing closer than 4 meters. So as you all know, the wider you go in row spacing, the less productive they'll be, and that's because of the amount of light they intercept. So bringing in the row spacing is effectively increasing your light interception and therefore your productivity. And like I said before, the ability to manipulate the canopy to be SNAP, the simple, narrow, accessible, and productive. This photo here is probably stretching the limits and getting quite innovative with grafting. It's not the most common option that you'll see out there, but this is a 4 meter by 2 meter row, and tree spacing, and in order to get more light interception, a V trellis was put in, and for each rootstock we've got 8 uprights coming out of it. So that ticks off the simple, it ticks off the narrow, because you're keeping each plane of the V quite strict and structured. It's accessible, and it's productive. But in a row spacing any wider than that productive part becomes less of a reality. Here's a case study I did recently on grafting versus replanting in terms of the cumulative cash result. What this here just stresses is the advantage of the lower capital investment in grafting. So that blue line is grafting. You can see that the capital investment in year 0 is low, and therefore it's easy to do in terms of cash flow, as opposed to spending $100,000 a hectare replanting. But like I said, there's a lot of must-haves in terms of grafting, so making sure they're optimized before you go down this this track. Another one is the timing of grafting is highly critical, and things, there's lots of resources out there to best practice grafting, but things like leaving a sap drawer gives much more time flexibility in grafting, and things like that. The other option is replanting. So the big part of replanting, and you will all have most likely done it in recent past, but the thing about replanting is deciding on which growing system to do. And so the big part of this is keeping it snap, but also making sure it has the ability to have high yield accumulation, and it's able to be labor efficient, and it's able to utilize technology in terms of scanning and in terms of the robot harvester in 10 years time. I think we said that 10 years ago as well, but it will come, and these canopies can't be complex. They can't have a whole lot of dimensions for that sort of technology to come. It's important to note here that there's no one golden system. The best fit for you will be what's best fit for your management and your labor force, because every system comes with a different level of complexity and precision. So being able to choose one that you're able to optimize to the best of your ability is really, really important. So that comes, so we've got the levers to success. We know what block we're going to develop. We've got the variety, and now we know what training system we're going to go to. Now it's time to take a more helicopter view, I suppose, of the development decisions and think about the fundamentals. So what I mean by fundamentals is when you're developing a block, there's often a reason you're developing it, and sometimes it's about these fundamentals. Sometimes it's about the drainage or the irrigation hasn't been optimized, the timing of activities haven't been optimized, etc. So it's really important to nail what that limiting factor was. An example being, if you're developing a block that had bad drainage issues, and you develop it without sorting out that drainage, then effectively you're just starting again. So really important to think about what the fundamentals are to success, what those limiting factors are, and to fix them. Because in terms of the internal rate of return after 15 years, nailing those fundamentals are really key, especially around early yield accumulation. So that table there down the bottom is a little bit of modeling I did where effectively we ran a 15-year internal rate of return, and with all the fundamentals optimized, you had an internal rate of return of 12.2%. When you didn't have them optimized, and it's something like you didn't quite get the timing of activities in tree training when the tree was young, or the nutrition or something, and you delay cropping for a year, your internal rate of return after 15 years is 8.5%, which is really significant and really important to do, because there's, unfortunately, with our rising costs and our market's ability to pay, we need to be able to be the best growers that we can be, and making sure these fundamentals are right, kind of factors that are in your control, and you have the ability to do them. So really, really important. The last one is young tree success. So this effectively, when you're thinking about development, is a really strong message, because these trees almost need to be treated like babies in order to fill their space. The whole strategy around planting and forgetting is a slow train to disaster, because these these trees need a lot of attention when they're young in order to make them really successful. So Jonathan, my colleague, quite often talks about the six big ones: water, wire, weed, pest, disease, and feed. All of them, without the others, need to be optimized in order to get the tree up and moving to fill their space at the appropriate pace. And there's a few other things like managing variability. So the first one's actually that EM mapping, where before the plants go in, you're mapping the soil, so you're working out what the baseline variability in the block is. This gives you stats around, a lighter soil, a heavier soil, and whether you put double line drip in or whether you put a more vigorous rootstock in some areas rather than others. And things like grading trees. We know that we don't get the same tree out of the nursery for the whole block. So grading them into areas where you can manage it becomes a lot easier to manage if you don't, rather than if you don't. And the other one is watching the crop load vigor balance. And so this one's pretty self-explanatory, but preventing, having the right crop load for your tree, measuring TCAs, etc., but preventing overcropping young trees is really important, but also undercropping and growing the tree too quickly is also a risk. So in summary, when thinking about developing this season or next season, collect data. The 4 Ps continue to be fundamental. Collect data by block, which really helps you make these decisions. Takes away the gut feel and allows you to be really, really informed, takes that emotion out of it. Start the what to plant next discussions if you haven't already. And there's a few key things in there, like building relationships with IP varieties, with other growers, with your post-harvest facilitators, all really help with that decision. Discover the grafting or replant discussion. It's not the easiest, but definitely one to think about. And making sure, if you're looking at grafting, making sure those must-haves are ticked off, and making sure the fundamentals are optimized. So making sure, if you're redeveloping a block that had a limitation, that limitation is fixed, so that the development of your next block can be as successful as possible. Because we know that with rising costs, etc., we need to be on the money with our development, as well as all 15 years or 20 years or however long the trees last until the next development. So in order to get all those 3 Ps optimized, this all needs to fall in line. So that's all from me. Thank you. So yeah, happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Jack. Hey, look, so if you're online and you'd like to ask a question, there's a section, the Q&A section on the top of your screen. If you just want to jump to that and type a question, and I'll relay it back to Jack, and we can answer that. But whilst we're waiting for people to ask questions, Jack, I might just jump in. I've just spent the last 3 days. I've just been in Tasmania. I was in Batlow yesterday and this morning, and I've just got back into Canberra. Varieties is the choice of varieties. It's what's the key driver? Which varieties you should be choosing? Are you looking at the ones with the Packout rates? Is it the least cost and labor involved? Is the ability to store it? Is it the sugar content? I mean, there's a whole issue. What are your key drivers when you sit down to choose a variety?
For me, the key drivers are, it falls back to that OBA results, and for a variety to optimize, productivity, pack out, and price. So and all 3 of them. So a variety that is high yielding, that can get a good amount of fruit into a class 1 box is really important. There's obviously some varieties that can and some varieties that can't, and also a variety that the consumer wants. So the price is a key impact as well. So that comes down to, that differs between regions as well. There's some warmer climate varieties coming out that would suit the northern states rather than southern, and etc. But yeah, my key thing is optimizing those 3 Ps, but also for me it's at an orchard level, and it's optimizing the labor as well. Like you might have a whole lot of very good varieties planted and they're humming, and they're all harvested in March. There's no point planting another variety that's harvested in March if you can't handle it in terms of labor.
Yeah, look, no, I guess I've been following the ABA, your data sets, and it's fascinating insights, and it's something we as an industry need to spend a lot more time looking at. Given, like, we look at the last 4 years, the cost increases in particular, what are those, but don't want you to put it on the spot, which varieties do you think lend themselves to kind of having, from a labor point of view, the less amount of handling? You can take that on notice if you want to.
Yeah. To be honest, I probably don't have a lot of insight into that from an Australian point of view.
Yeah. I guess the other interesting thing that's kicked around, we've just got the mainland of Australia's got access to China for the first time in the last couple of weeks, and obviously getting that variety right for the Chinese market and understanding. And now, I'm not an expert on varieties for the Chinese market, but I am assured that sweet apples are particularly the priority. So again, any insights on that? I've got a note from Fruit West over there. I'm asking that question: does opportunity to export come into the decision making?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just the ability to know who your target market is, and what they like in an apple. So yeah, you're right. China likes a big red fruit, and that's what needs to be targeted. They don't like the tangy stuff to the same degree. So yeah, whether it's China or whether it's any of the domestic stuff, it's just knowing what the consumer is prepared to pay. Needs to have a huge impact on the what to plant next discussion. Because again, there's no point in planting something that no one wants.
Yes, it's a very we did so I did a lot of work doing the Badlow bushfires, and we kind of estimated the cost of replacing a hectare of orchards was around about $350,000, and to take 5 years to bring that to commercialization, it can be a very painful lesson if you've got the wrong variety. So, and we've just completed the orchard census, and sitting down with growers and saying, why did you plant those trees? And they said, they're the only ones available at the nursery. So, I would encourage people to spend a bit of time and due diligence in looking which varieties are best, and because it can be a long-term expensive pastime.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good. If there are no more questions, thanks to everybody online. We've got a good turnout of people listening in, which is fantastic. Jack, thank you very much for your time. Again, to all the growers online, any questions, anything you'd like, please email us, send us notes. We're very happy to get back to you and give as much information and insights as at all. I would encourage you to look at the OBA business analysis things, understand your businesses from a profitability point of view, because data and understanding the cost is such a big issue in this high inflationary environment. Okay, well, thank you very much. Any parting words of wisdom, Jack?
No, all good. Good luck for the decision making, and hopefully that's given some insight or some motivation for you to go out and get some data and make some decisions.
Good. Excellent. Well, thank you very much, everybody. Have a good rest of the week. Cheers.
Cool. Thank you.